What is going on, everybody? Sports Expert here, and we are here with our 2025 NFL Mock Draft Week 5 edition. And before we start the video, please hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, turn on the post notification bell, like the video, comment what you think. Liking and commenting helps us in the algorithm, so I would appreciate that very much. It helps the channel out. It helps the NFL community on YouTube. So let's get right into it. As at number 1, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we have them selecting Travis Hunter, cornerback / wide receiver out of Colorado. I think it's no secret that Travis Hunter is the best player in college football right now, and he is the favorite to go number 1. The only question with him is he going to be a corner or a wide receiver in the NFL? Because it feels like he's not going to be able to play both. I don't know if whatever coach he's going to go to lets him play both. He's just not going to play both positions at the NFL. But a lot of scouts like him more at corner than receiver, although he is an electric wide receiver. There's no doubt about that if you watch the tape at Colorado. He can moss guys left and right, but I think the lockdown corner tape at Colorado might be enough for him to persuade coaches to keep him at the corner's position where he was recruited out of high school. So I think that's where he may stay. But don't be surprised if he does play a little bit of both with the NFL. He just won't play a ton of receiver. But Travis Hunter to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this order is based off the current order right now through the first 4 weeks of the season. At 2, we have the Miami Dolphins selecting Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan. Graham is arguably the best defensive lineman in this draft class right now. There's a lot of other very talented individuals, but Graham takes the cake right now. Had another really good game against Minnesota, and he is rising through draft boards. He could easily be a top 5 pick. The Dolphins need some more interior help, and Mason Graham could be a guy that wreaks havoc as the Dolphins try to get better physically. At 3, the New England Patriots will select Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona. The New England Patriots have been looking for a wide receiver for years now, and they could have selected Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft last year, but they needed a quarterback desperately, so they went with Drake May, which was the right move, and now they have their premier position to draft a wide receiver in this year's draft class. Tetairoa McMillan would make a lot of sense. He is one of the better receivers in college football. He's 6'5", runs very well, very good contested catch receiver. He's a guy, very good receiver after the catch. He's a guy a lot of teams are going to really want high, and the Patriots make a lot of sense. At 4, we have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Deone Walker, defensive tackle out of Kentucky. Deone Walker once again wreaked havoc against Ole Miss. He's going to be a top 10, top 15 pick. There's no doubt about it at this point. I think he's shown enough where teams are really enthralled by his play. He's just a guy a lot of teams are going to like, and looking at it, the Bengals need some defensive line help. Sheldon Rankins and B.J. Hill have been injured, and when they are off the field, it's really rough. And Rankins is on a 1-year deal, I believe, which Hill stay healthy consistently? And even if he does, they're going to need another guy inside, and the Bengals defense is really struggling because of the lack of presence on the defensive line. So Deone Walker would make a lot of sense here. At 5, we have the Cleveland Browns selecting Will Campbell, offensive tackle out of LSU. In my opinion, Will Campbell is the best offensive tackle in the class. He's one of the better players in the whole class as an overall, definitely a top 10 player. The Browns, we could have went quarterback here because of the uncertainty with Deshaun Watson, but looking at Deshaun Watson's play last week versus the Raiders, he played a pretty decent game, and the offensive line really let him down. So if you're the Cleveland Browns, do you think about taking an offensive line this high in the draft if you're picking here? If you do, Will Campbell would be the best situation for yourselves because he can slot into left tackle immediately, and he's a pro-ready player even though he's only a junior. So looking at it, the Cleveland Browns need to go out and get Will Campbell in the draft if they can. At 6, the Tennessee Titans take a quarterback. Brian Callahan gets his own guy, and they select Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. So Shedeur Sanders has had some really up-and-down tape. A lot of scouts think he's a low-end first-round guy, and a lot of scouts think he's a high-end first-round guy. But the Tennessee Titans have a need at quarterback at this point. They're calling for Mason Rudolph right now, and Will Levis was picked by the last coaching regime. I know Rand Carthen was there when he was selected, but does Brian Callahan get to pick his own guy? He may. And looking at Shedeur Sanders' tape this week against UCF, you know why teams want him in the top 10. The traits are there. The awareness is there. A lot of people have criticized him for his lack of awareness, but he's really shown his awareness can be improved at the NFL level this season. And he's still been very accurate with the ball. And looking at it, his deep ball has also been a strong point in his game. So although he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but the Tennessee Titans get a player that they really like here in Shedeur Sanders, and it would make a lot of sense. At 7, the Carolina Panthers also go quarterback. Dave Canales gets his own guy, as it feels like the bridge is burned with Bryce Young. They select Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami. And there is one issue with Ward here. He turns the ball over a lot. He fumbles a lot. He'll throw some wacky interceptions, especially when a team is driving down the field. He'll have a weird turnover, which ruins a drive. But the talent's there. He's very NFL ready. He can run with the ball. He's mobile. He's strong. A lot of teams are going to like that. His arm is stronger than some of the other quarterbacks in this class. So the Carolina Panthers are going to take that into consideration. Dave Canales, if he can get his own guy, and if Cam Ward's that guy, maybe he has the confidence in where he can work with Ward, and he can make the Panthers a contender. At 8, the Los Angeles Rams take Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan. So the Rams, they would like another player on the defensive side of the ball, another playmaker, and Will Johnson makes a lot of sense. He's the best corner in the draft. There's no debate about that. He's one of the better players in college football as well. I mean, Travis Hunter is the best corner in the draft, but he's obviously, we don't know if he's going to be a corner receiver officially, but the best sole corner in the draft is Will Johnson. So the Rams, they'll have their choice of what corner they want because the corner position is kind of lacking for them. Jacoby Durant is okay, but Tre'Davious White is on a one-year deal, and he's getting a bit up there in age. So Will Johnson would make a lot of sense here. At 9, we have the Arizona Cardinals selecting James Pierce Jr., defensive end out of Tennessee. So Pierce was a lot of people's number 1 player coming into the season, but he really just hasn't lived up to expectations from the preseason. But there are a lot of scouts that are still really high on him. They believe he can still wreak havoc consistently, and he's going to be a guy that's going to be in the top 10 on a lot of boards nonetheless. And the Cardinals have a desperate need at pass rush. B.J. Ojulari was going to be one of their top pass rushers this season, but they've had no pass rush since he suffered a season-ending injury in the preseason. So the Cardinals are going to need presence up there physically, and James Pierce Jr. makes a lot of sense to pair up with like a Zaven Collins, which can also help other guys on that defensive line. So give me Pierce to the Cardinals. At 10, we have the Giants selecting a quarterback. We have them selecting Jalen Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama. So Milroe, his stock's been sky high this season. He has 18 total touchdowns already and 1 interception through 5 games. So looking at the Alabama Crimson Tide, Milroe, he's been able to, what I like about Milroe, he's been able to throw the deep ball at a more consistent rate than people have give credit for, because I see some people saying the deep ball isn't there when it clearly is. If there's one thing that might be a bit concerning about Milroe, it's his progressions. Can he be consistent with his progressions down the field? It's not the deep ball. And he can run the ball, of course. We know that. He's very mobile, and he can be a playmaker here and there. And the Giants would love that from a guy like Jalen Milroe. They tried to get as much as they can with Daniel Jones, but it just doesn't seem like they're going to be able to do the trick with him. At 11, we have the Indianapolis Colts selecting Luther Burden, wide receiver out of Missouri. So the Colts get a playmaker here. They have some decent receivers in Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, but nobody that's absolutely a bona fide star. Michael Pittman's very good, but I don't know if I'd consider him a bona fide star. And the Colts, maybe they take a best player of available approach here with Luther Burden. So Burden, maybe he can be that bona fide star for them. He is a little undersized. There's that. And he has had the most productive season so far. But once again, like James Pierce, scouts really love him still. And there's no doubt he's going to go early in this draft class. At 12, we have the Los Angeles Chargers selecting Abdul Carter, defensive end out of Penn State. So Carter, on the other hand, He's having a decent season. He's wreaking havoc once again. And Jim Harbaugh, it just feels like a Jim Harbaugh type player here. Khalil Mack's on an expiring deal. The physicality isn't getting any better in Los Angeles. So getting a bona fide star from the Penn State and Indy Lions in the defensive side of the ball would make a lot of sense. He coached in the Big Ten, Harbaugh. Carter played in the Big Ten. Make it make sense here. Why not? At 13, we have the New Orleans Saints, and they're taking Harold Perkins Jr., linebacker out of LSU. So Perkins, he did tear his ACL, so he'll have to rehab from that. But I don't think his stock's going to take too much of a hit because of how talented he is. He can rush the passer. He can cover. He can tackle consistently as a linebacker. Although he didn't have the greatest sophomore season, his true freshman season should not be shadowed. That was terrific. And I think a lot of teams are going to take into consideration the talent this kid has, and he can even get better. So Harold Perkins to the Saints makes sense because Willie Gay, I believe, is on a one-year deal. You have Demario Davis, who's 35 years old. So that leaves you with maybe Pete Werner as your best linebacker long term. You want a guy that can make a solid presence in that linebacker room and rush the passer, with Cameron Jordan possibly retiring sooner than later. This would make a lot of sense for the New Orleans Saints. At 14, we have the Dallas Cowboys. This is probably one of the most fascinating picks of my mock. Ashton Jeanty, running back out of Boise State. So Jeanty, he's had a great season so far through 4 games, I believe it is. He already has 845 rushing yards, and I believe he has double-digit scores. I mean, he's been absolutely incredible. He has like 13 scores already, it said. I mean, he's going to be a candidate for the Heisman Trophy. I'm not sure if he's going to be penalized for playing in the group of 5, but looking at it, he's easily the best running back in the country. He's going to be a lock to win the Doak Walker Award. The Cowboys need a running back. Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott is not going to do the trick. Their offense really hasn't done a lot this season, surprisingly, even with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb still there. But that's because they don't really have a running game at all. If you can get a guy like Ashton Jeanty, a playmaker, his vision is terrific. He's good at breaking tackles. He can be a good receiving back. He'll be an all-down back of the NFL, and he is a first-round talent here. If you're the Cowboys, why not take him? This would be an incredible opportunity to bolster your offense with your running game and your passing game, which can open it up. At 15, we have the Chicago Bears selecting Kelvin Banks Jr., offensive tackle out of Texas. So Banks, he is one of the better tackles in the draft, and with position needs for other positions for teams in the heavy defensive talent pool in this draft, I could see Banks falling a bit, and the Chicago Bears could take advantage here. Protect Caleb Williams. The offensive line hasn't looked efficient this season so far. Get another guy that can play alongside Darnell Wright. So looking at it, I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. Kelvin Banks is very physical. That would be a great tackle duo for the Chicago Bears. At 16, we have the Green Bay Packers selecting Benjamin Morrison, corner out of Notre Dame. So the Packers don't have a lot of glaring needs. They could take a left tackle here, but I do think going with one of the better players on the board left in Benjamin Morrison, when there is maybe a little bit of a need for corner, makes a lot of sense. Eric Stokes got his 5th-year option decline. He hasn't done the job. He'll be a free agent in the offseason. And then you got Benjamin Morrison here. Why not slot him in? He can play next to Jair Alexander. That would be a great duo for the Green Bay Packers in the future. Did you see how their defense against the Minnesota Vikings passed? It was not ideal. Corner's going to be a need for them this offseason, and Benjamin Morrison makes a lot of sense here. At 17, we have the San Francisco 49ers selecting Michael Williams, defensive end out of Georgia. They could take Emory Jones from LSU, but I think Michael Williams is just too talented to pass up on. I think he's a guy that can really bolster this pass rush for the 49ers and give him another playmaker who's as talented as can be. And he might be much more talented than the 17th pick. Here's the one thing about the 49ers. The thing is with the 49ers, they're going to look for as much talent as possible. They're not going to be a team that's like nitpicky and such. They're going to want talent. They want to win a Super Bowl. They're not just going to be like this and that. They're going to fill needs. There's no doubt about it. But if you have a first-round pick in the draft and you see a player like Michael Williams available, they're going to look at it. I know they drafted Ricky Pearsall this year in 31st, so that was kind of more of a nitwicky pick. But, I mean, if you have the opportunity to pair Michael Williams with Nick Bosa, you do it. You have to do that. And if you're the 49ers, you say, best player available, let's go. At 18, we have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Trey Harris, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. So Harris is having a great year with Ole Miss so far. He leads the FBS in receiving with 804 yards through 5 games. He's been absolutely terrific. Had 225 yards against Georgia Southern and another really good game against a nice, stout Kentucky defense. So Harris, his stock is really going up the roof. If there's one thing about Harris, he can be careless with the ball sometimes. But the Ravens, I think they're just going to want a guy that can just help them stretch the field, help Lamar Jackson. You'll have Trey Harris, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, of course. Those are some guys, and maybe another free agent receiver if they'd like. Those are guys that can help solidify a solid wide receiver core for the Baltimore Ravens in the future. At 19, we have the Philadelphia Eagles selecting Nick Scorton, defensive end out of Texas A&M. There's no doubt the Philadelphia Eagles will be looking to bolster the defensive line once again, like they do every offseason. They do have Josh Sweat still. They still have Nolan Smith who will step in. They will play. Josh Sweat will play defensive end. There have been trade rumors with Josh Sweat over the past couple of seasons, so I wonder if his time could be coming to an end. Brandon Graham's retiring. Bryce Huff is good, but he's really hasn't proven himself consistently throughout his career. So going with another defensive lineman and Nick Scorton can make sense here. I considered corner for the Eagles here as well, which would make a lot of sense, but to wreak havoc on the defense, you got to have a solid pass rush, and Nick Scorton would also make a lot of sense here. Still very young. At 20, we have the New York Jets, and another fascinating pick here. We have them selecting Quinn Ewers, quarterback out of Texas. So Ewers could fall a bit due to the lack of quarterback desire in this class. And the Jets, looking at it, Aaron Rodgers, who knows how long he's going to be there? Is he going to be there in 2 years? Not too sure. He'll probably be here next offseason, but Quinn Ewers, he could sit a year under Aaron Rodgers and learn. Look at Jordan Love. He's learned. He's looked pretty solid. Why not do the same with Quinn Ewers? You know, looking at it, the New York Jets, they're not in a rush with a quarterback. So, I mean, they could wait for 2026, but if you have an opportunity to select a guy as talented as Quinn Ewers with the arm he possesses, look at the Michigan tape. Don't tell me that's a guy you can't really go out there and make a good NFL quarterback with. The New York Jets will take advantage of that. And, hey, Robert Saleh, I mean, who knows if he'll be there or not by then, but whatever the New York Jets do, they're going to prioritize quarterback, and Quinn Ewers can be a guy. And we have the Raiders selecting a quarterback at 21. We have them selecting Carson Beck, quarterback out of Georgia. So Beck, he hasn't been the most efficient quarterback this year. He had a lot of talent last year, but since a lot of that talent left to the National Football League, his performance has really dipped. The turnovers are growing up. He's just not reading the field as well with guys like Dylan Bell, Oscar Delp, Benjamin Urasek, etc. And with the absences of Ladd McConkey, Brock Bowers, and others, it just hasn't been the same for him. But he's still talented, and a lot of teams really think he can be a solid NFL quarterback nonetheless. Another guy scouts will still really like. So the Raiders going Carson Beck would make sense. Not sure if he can be the franchise guy there, but you're taking him with a first-round pick, so maybe you think about it. Why not? At 22, we have the Broncos selecting Elic Iamander, wide receiver out of Stanford. I believe this is a first-round talent. I don't think there's any doubt about it. He carried Stanford in the Colorado game last year. He carried Stanford in the end of the Syracuse game. He's terrific. Nonetheless, going to Denver, staying on the western side of the country, why not? They need another receiver. Iamander can make plays. He's physical. He's got good speed. There's no doubt about this would be a great pick for the Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos. Tell about Bo Nix. At 23, we have the Atlanta Falcons selecting a wide receiver of their own. We have them selecting Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of Ohio State. So Egbuka, he's been pretty solid so far for the Ohio State Buckeyes this season. He looks much better than he did last year when he had Kyle McCord. Now he has Will Howard, who's a slightly better quarterback. And Egbuka, he's really good with after the catch as well. He's another receiver that can really perform in that level. He's not going to be the fastest guy in the world, but he's a guy that's going to run solid routes. He's going to do the job. He's going to be the guy that does the job. And pairing him alongside guys like Darnell Mooney and Drake London when the need for a wide receiver is clear, when you have Ray McLeod as your wide receiver 3, you got to do it. So the Falcons go out and select a receiver in Egbuka. At 24, we have the Detroit Lions selecting Jalen Walker, defensive end / linebacker out of Georgia. So Walker, he's a guy that he wasn't in a lot of people's radars coming into this season, but he's wreaked havoc for the Georgia Bulldogs so far this season. His stock's really gone up. It reminds me of Trayvon Walker. Wasn't on a lot of people's radars, and he ended up rising up to the first overall pick. I could see Walker being a top 15, top 10 pick when this is all said and done. But right now, we have him at the 24 spot. The Lions, they do need another guy that can create havoc on that defense. The secondary is definitely being built well. Like, they have Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold now. They've got guys they can develop. Kirby Joseph is there. So why not go and get a Jalen Walker who can play alongside Aiden Hutchinson and can really cover with his solid ball skills at the linebacker position. And if those ball skills don't work, I mean, he's, like I said, still a great presence alongside Aiden Hutchinson. He's versatile. At 25, we have the Washington Commanders selecting Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. So looking at it, there's a lot of ways the Commanders could go here. They could go with an offensive lineman. They could go with a wide receiver. You know, they could even say cornerback if they want to look for a different option. But I'm going to say Starks here, and here's why. He's very talented. There's no doubt about it. A lot of scouts really like him as a top 15 player. And if he falls here, which I could see because the demand for safeties in the top half of the draft isn't too heavy, I think the Commanders got to be all over this. I think Dan Quinn would really be intrigued with Malachi Starks on his football team. Their current safeties are Jeremy Chinn and Quay Martin. I mean, Quay Martin's fine, but Jeremy Chinn is not really the needle mover you want. So another guy would make a lot of sense in the safety room. And Malachi Starks has the potential to be an all-pro safety. There's no doubt about it. He's got great ball hawking skills. He's very smart. Football IQ is up the roof. Why not go ahead and take him if you're the Commanders? Give it a shot. This would be a terrific pick. Great value at the 25th spot as well. At 26, we have the Buffalo Bills selecting Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle out of Michigan. It feels like their run defense has been so poor this year. One of the worst in football. Might be the worst in football, and here's why. They really haven't faced the run much this year, and that's because they've went ahead in games. But when they have gotten absolutely torched. They need a force inside, and Kenneth Grant makes a lot of sense. 339, 6'3". If you're the Buffalo Bills, you have got to take advantage here. Select Kenneth Grant. He falls a bit in this draft. You could argue he could go higher here, but the Buffalo Bills, they get a force, and why not? A guy that's played on an experienced Michigan defensive line with a lot of havoc and a lot of physicality. At 27, we have the Seattle Seahawks selecting Tyler Booker, offensive guard out of Alabama. I considered Donovan Jackson for this spot, but looking at it, it feels like Booker might be the guy that goes first. It feels like he might be the better overall prospect, the more consistent guy, and if the Seahawks look for that, Booker could be their selection. They need talent in that offensive line. They need more in the trenches. You could say if one of the quarterbacks was available, maybe they go with one of those and maybe let Geno Smith walk after 2025 and they sit another year, but that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. And Tyler Booker here, he would provide a huge presence for the Seahawks interior offensive line. They lost Damian Jones in the offseason. Booker has a chance to be an all-pro, and there's no doubt about that. The Seahawks should take advantage here. At 28, the Pittsburgh Steelers select wide receiver Isaiah Bond out of Texas. The Steelers are looking for a receiver. They missed out on Brandon Ayuk. They're looking at Devontae Adams right now, and they strike out there. And even if they hit a home run with Devontae Adams, they still need another playmaker of the wide receiver position. Isaiah Bond, one of the most shiftiest guys in this draft. The Steelers, why not take a shot on a guy that could definitely stretch the field? He can catch the deep ball. He can be a consistent threat out there. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they need that with this offense. If Justin Fields keeps this up and you give him another option, that could make it even more interesting for this football team. Mike Tomlin, do the right thing. Select wide receiver Isaiah Bond. At 29, we have the Texans selecting Nick Amanwari, safety out of South Carolina. So South Carolina has been off to a decent start this season. They are 3-1 with the loss at LSU, which a game they should have won. They kind of got screwed by the refs there. But Amanwari has been a very good force for the South Carolina secondary so far. And he's a guy that's really risen up draft boards. He's a potential first-round guy. And the Texans, why not take a safety? Jimmy Ward's a free agent. You have Jalen Petrie, but you're going to need another guy there. You don't want to just have a dead spot at the safety position. And with how your team's looking, it's not like your weaknesses are crazy. You could go best player available here, but I think Amanwari would make a lot of sense from a defensive standpoint and a philosophy standpoint for the Houston Texans. At 30, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going with Emory Jones, offensive tackle out of LSU. It might be a bit surprising he falls here, but looking at teams' positions of needs, Emory Jones as a right tackle, I think teams value left tackles a bit more, but he's a very talented right tackle that could go early. But he falls to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here. Luke Gadecki's okay. He's okay. He's not a needle mover. He's okay. So the Buccaneers may look at offensive tackle here. And if Gadecki can't stay healthy, which he hasn't yet this season, they have Justin School in there who struggled mightily. They need help at that right tackle position. The Buccaneers they've been very solid despite some injuries this season. The one thing that's holding back here and there is offensive line play. Emory Jones is very physical. He's very smart. He's very quick with his feet. The Buccaneers they need to do the right thing and select Emory Jones because, if you can get Baker Mayfield the protection with Tristan Wirfs and Emory Jones, that offense could be unstoppable. Especially if Mike Evans keeps going and if they bring back Chris Godwin. You have got to do it. And I'm saying that they've got to bring back those guys because with those guys and with those two tackles, that offense could be lights out. At 31, we have the Minnesota Vikings selecting Denzel Burke, corner out of Ohio State. So Burke's name hasn't been mentioned a ton this season. And honestly, if you think about it, that's a good thing, because you don't want your name to be mentioned out loud to a lot of people as a corner. You know, Burke's, he has an interception this year, I believe, but he hasn't been the most productive in the world. I mean, he's still an okay tackler. Maybe he can work on his strength a bit, but he's a very good cover corner, one of the better cover corners in the draft. The Vikings are going to need another corner. They have Stephon Gilmore there, and he's aging. He's only on a one-year deal, and I believe I can't remember who their other corner is, but it's another guy that's pretty much aging. Can't bind him solid, but he's more of a hybrid corner safety type guy. So get another pure corner here in Denzel Burke would do wonders for the Vikings. The only question is, will Brian Flores be with the Vikings next season? I'm going to go no. But does that really matter? I don't believe so. And at 32, we have the Kansas City Chiefs going with an Ohio State Buckeye, as we did with the 31st pick. Quinshon Judkins, a running back. He has been terrific for Ohio State. He's been good after the catch, after the carry, breaking tackles. He's very quick. Had one of the longest runs in Ohio State history, 86 yards. Even though it was against Marshall, you can see the vision with Judkins is there. He's absolutely outstanding. He's a very smart football player. There were questions about his attitude and such, but I don't think there's a lot to say other than he's a very hardworking guy. The Chiefs would love that alongside Isaiah Pacheco, who's been up and down with injuries. So if you can get another playmaker, the Kansas City Chiefs would be very interested in that. I'm sure Patrick Mahomes would really want to sign off on a guy like this. Why not? Do it for Andy Reid's offense. Andy Reid will be there probably another few seasons. He's going to want to bolster the offense because he trusts Steve Spagnuolo to get that defense going, regardless of who they have, even though they'll probably bring in some guys. But Quinshon Judkins here would be a great pick for the Chiefs. And honestly, I think it would be very good value-wise. I think he could go earlier just because of the type of playmaking he has with the run and the reception. So Quinshon Judkins there at 32. So I appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate everyone that tuned in and stayed throughout the whole video. Please hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Turn on the post notification bell. Like the video. Comment what you think. I would appreciate it, everybody. Sports Expert here. I'm out, guys. Peace.